And you might think, well, it's all the right-wing psychologists. It's like, all the right-wing psychologists are in this room, sitting in this chair.
That part's probably true, because being a right-wing psychologist means that you don't follow the standards of care for a psychologist. Woke student tries to frame and cancel Jordan Peterson. Gets destroyed instantly.
Is that sufficient?
But you sort of do have certain predispositions that you're giving in the same way in which people from political correctness are trying to say this is what it means to be a woman, these are the kind of things that it is expected from a woman to do to defend herself. And it's
By the way, in general, I would not recommend taking on a conservative in this format. Unfortunately, they have the floor, they have the power, they have usually the audience to back them up. And it's not a good idea. You would really, really have to, like, stand out and shine. In general, it's just not a good idea, because they always got some kind of comeback, some kind of punchy gotcha, and then the whole audience claps. And then everyone claps, right?
It seems to me that you are
But we'll see how she does.
claim about this is what conservative people do, and this is how they always relate to hierarchy.
Well, I
Okay,
don't.
she got some applause.
I would say that I perhaps am doing that, but I don't see how that's the same as what the
got stock
postmodernists are doing. I mean, as far as I can tell, the postmodernists.
Yes, the feminists in they pantsuits. They're all wearing the same outfit. What the fuck is this? This is feminism, guys. This one says woman, in case you couldn't see it. Women! Yes, women! Sexism, but it's crossed out. Girl power. This is true. This is the real feminist movement, guys.
Aren't saying that the groups, the individuals within those groups, are characterized by
They
any
all
stable
shot the TJ
characteristics
Maxx
whatsoever,
together.
except
That's
for the
being too
fact of
generous.
their
This looks like it's from
comparative
fucking Goodwill,
oppression.
man.
Like, so I don't understand the first part of your argument. I mean, part of the reason the postmodern types have been going after me is because I've
Who runs the world? Girls. The future is female. Okay, this one looks like an NB, sorry.
dared to say that men and women differ in temperament, which, by the way, they do. So, now, you know, that's actually,
I'm not even paying attention to what he's saying right now. I should go back. Sorry. People say fire or water is the best starter type. I think it's postmodern.
temperament, which, by the way, they do. So, now, you know, that's actually something that might be worth just differentiating quickly, because it's actually.
They got so close to her, I was afraid that we're going to go down to like the microscopic level and start getting into like a sweat pour or something. And we're going to do a whole Magic School Bus episode. That'd be a crazy transition, wouldn't it?
Differentiating quickly, because it's actually
Lost in the blonde eye. She's very
technically
pretty.
somewhat challenging, but also very much worth knowing. I was debating someone on a panel this morning on a TV show, The Right Stuff.
What is this now?
And this was a woman who led the Women's Equality Party. And she cited some psychological literature that purported to claim that men and women were mostly the same. And that's actually true.
Okay.
We are more the same than different. If you look at our temperaments,
Okay,
there's
good take.
more overlap than there is variance by a substantial amount. And so even on the temperamental dimensions where there is most difference between men and women, the difference isn't of massive magnitude at the center of the distribution. So for example, women are less aggressive than men.
Okay, that's not true at all, okay? Let me tell you something. That's not true.
By the way, why they try to commit suicide more often, but are much less lethal in their actions. That's one example, but there are many examples. If you draw a random woman and a random man out of the population, the probability that the man will be more aggressive is 60%. If you bet on the man, you'd win 60% of the time.
In all reality, I think it is true, actually. Men are more driven to aggression because of the societal pressures and norms that are put on them. And, like, they're not... We've been over this many times, but it always bears repeating. Like, men are expected to be the breadwinners, to be the guy wearing the pants, to have it all together, to not show their emotions, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. So, like, the way that they end up releasing all of that pent-up emotional energy is being aggressive, because that is considered a manly thing, is to be aggressive, be angry, be mean, smash shit, right? hit people. That's what we've taught, that toxic masculinity, right? That's kind of what we inadvertently taught people.
Time. That's not a walloping difference. It's not 95% of the time. You know, it's a difference that is substantive, it's significant, it's measurable, but it's not large by the standards by which such things are judged. But that's not the point. The point is that most of the activity takes place at the extremes. So out on the tails of the distribution. So here's an example. About 9 out of 10 people.
Why do we need the music and the stock footage? Can we just have JBP talking, please? Like, please?
In prison are male. Why? Because to be in prison, you have to be the most aggressive person, let's say, in 100. Okay. Those differences at the...
What? No, to be in jail, you have to, like, commit tax fraud. Like, that's all it takes to be in jail, man, unless you're like a millionaire. No, in all seriousness, like, there are way, way more men in jail for multiple reasons. Part of it is the aggression, okay? Men are more likely to commit aggressive acts of violence. That is true. But a big part of it also is that court systems are way heavier on men than they are on women. Like, the number of life sentences that men get over women is astonishing, okay? Let me look up the statistic real quick. In the United States, men are adversely affected by sentencing disparity between twice as likely to be sentenced to jail after conviction than women, and receiving on average 63% longer jail sentences. That is accounting for the fact that they committed exactly the same crime, by the way. They were convicted of the same thing and they get longer sentences. Why? I mean, you see the same thing in molestation cases, right? When older women molest younger men, or I should say children, boys, right? Take advantage of them, or adults. I mean, women can also take advantage of adults, right? Adult men. Way lighter sentences, if any. Like I've seen, I'm pretty sure one time a teacher got like 6 years for literally raping a child. Like, that's insane. Actually insane. It's unfathomable. And the reason is because this society perceives women to be innately less harmful than men. And in some circumstances, like it's kind of a cycle because we see things that way. Things sort of kind of pan out that way, but it also is resulting in a man and a woman both committing the same crime, and the man gets a way longer sentence. If you're in America, you can go to jail just for a little bag of pot. That is changing slowly but surely, but yes, that is true.
Are large enough so that if you go out to the extremes, 1 in 100 people, you have an overwhelming preponderance of men. And so you can have your cake and eat it too. You can say, well, yeah, broadly speaking, men and women are more the same than different. The overlap is greater than the disjunction. But that's not relevant if what's being selected is often at the extremes, and it often is. So for example, with regards to engineering, there's a fair bit of evidence that people who are more interested in things than in people become engineers. Now, that's not really going to be, what is that, shocking?
I'm going to need a source
for that. You shouldn't be shocked by that, right? You can.
I mean, literally though, how do you even measure such a thing? Like, I don't know. I feel like he just said all the autists become engineers and all the ADHD people become like nurses and service workers.
You can tell that not only by what engineers do, but you can tell that by how they think, and you can tell that just by talking to them, if you know a bunch of engineers. So, and it turns out that the largest temperamental difference that's known between men and women is actually interest in people versus interest in things. And so it has nothing to do with competence, but it has a lot to do with interest. And because you have to be very interested in things to go be an engineer, because that's all you're going to be doing if you're an engineer, then only those people who are extremely interested.
Okay, hold on. I highly doubt that all you do as an engineer is work with things. You have to work with people too, dog. Like, come on. Like, customer service is a thing, co-workers are a thing, managers and bosses are like, come on, miss me with that shit.
Interested in things tend to become engineers, and most of them are men.
But why are most of them men? That's not an innate difference, okay? That is a socialized difference. All right, engineering wasn't even always like really a job that you could even have. Like, think about feudal times, like where people just like farmed and shit. You know what I mean? There were no engineers back then. And to the extent that there were, they were like under the rule of the king and they lived in the fucking castle or some shit. I don't know. Almost the entirety of temperament is socialization. I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, people do the same thing with dogs, right? They say that like, oh, this dog breed acts this way and this dog breed acts that way. I got news for you guys. Studies show that different breeds of dogs, while temperament can vary sometimes, it's very minute, very, very minute differences when all the other factors are controlled for. You control for, like, think about it. What are pit bulls bred for? Usually they are bred to fight. or protect in a better way of putting it. Like, you get a pit bull to be a guard dog, or if you're a horrible fucking scumbag, to be a fighting dog, right? And so you will socialize them that way, okay? And yeah, bad owners make bad dogs, true. You can have a pit bull be the sweetest little teddy bear ever, okay? And you can have like a labradoodle who is supposed to be like a really sweet animal be a fucking depraved beast because he was raised incorrectly or his owners hated him. Like, it's less about the breed of the dog and more about the socialization that takes place, the raising that takes place. And it's the same kind of idea for humans. Men are not naturally more predisposed to aggression than women are. It's a result of the way that we're raised, the social element. And you can look at this back through history as well. It used to be considered, I forget which culture, in one culture it was considered manly to cry as a man, right? You cry for like your fallen allies and such. It's considered a manly thing to do. These days, it's not really considered that manly to cry. So we don't. Even me, a leftist, I feel silly crying. That sucks, you know?
And that's why even in places like Scandinavia, where a tremendous amount of effort has been put into flattening the sociocultural landscape, and successfully, by the way, there's still a preponderance of male engineers. And there's a preponderance of female nurses. And no matter how much sociological gerrymandering goes on, those statistics have remained quite intractable over about a 15-year period.
I guarantee you that there are way more female engineers today than there were back in like 1960. By default, like, they're allowed to be now. So of course there are going to be more of them. That difference will continue to even out as gendered expectations and gendered divides continue to break down. And that's a good thing. We should strive for that.
And so there are differences. They're not massive. And then you might ask, well, are those sociocultural or biological?
Here we go.
It's like, well, that's a hard question to answer because
not really.
It depends on how much variability there is in the sociocultural landscape, because the proportion by which something is biological versus sociocultural varies with the sociocultural landscape. That's a complicated thing to digest, because you think of those things as fixed, but they're not. So, but what we have demonstrated quite clearly, and this is mainstream science, despite the fact that
he didn't answer the question, by the way. He didn't say, like, how much of it is nature versus nurture? How much of it is nature, right? He didn't answer. He just said, we don't know.
People don't like it.
It's a very fancy way of saying we don't know.
This test has already been done. So we developed a personality model that's pretty stable across cultures, purely derived from statistical processes, an atheoretical model if there ever was one, and quite an unattractive model because of that, conceptually. But that's beside the point. Then we saw cross-culturally whether there were differences in the fundamental temperaments of men and women, and the answer was yes, cross-culturally, quite robust.
That's because cross-culturally, we see that there is always a cultural distinction between what we consider masculine and what we consider feminine. So of course there's going to be that across cultures, because across cultures, that's pretty much, I don't know about always, but certainly today in every culture that does exist, like in almost every culture. So of course we're going to see that.
Women are higher in the experience of anxiety and emotional pain, and they're more compassionate and agreeable. Those are the big differences. And they're differences of a magnitude that I already pointed out. Then the next question is, well, to what degree is that biological versus sociocultural? And it's complicated because that variable depends on the sociocultural landscape, but we'll put that aside. You can determine that by stacking up countries from those who have done everything they possibly can to flatten out the sociocultural landscape in relationship to gender, to those who haven't, that are still very stratified by sex.
It's supposed to say those who haven't.
And then what you do is you look at the magnitude of the temperament differences in keeping with the variability that those countries have in terms of their sociocultural egalitarianism. And the sociocultural types, the social constructionists, their prediction is, as cultures become more egalitarian, men and women become more different, more the same, because it's environmental. That isn't what happens. Exactly the opposite happens. As you flatten out the sociocultural landscape, men and women become more different.
Hold on, I'm gonna need a fucking source for that. Where is he pulling that from? Where does he get that info from? I highly, highly doubt that. I don't even know how I would begin to search that.
The data is in. The experiment is done. Tens of thousands of people, multiple countries. And it's not what anyone expected.
Gender differences in personality across the 10 aspects of the Big Five. Findings clarify the nature of gender differences in personality and highlight the utility of measuring personality at the aspect level. This is actually one of his more coherent videos. I'm kind of impressed with them, really. I'm not questioning that they're different. Of course they are. But I'm saying that it's because of the social elements rather than biological. The average personalities of men and women are systematically different. Does this mean, however, that Bill Cosby, that men and women are from different species is apt? I never thought that I would see that in a fucking research paper. Huh. We would caution against. When did this come? I have to know when this came out. 2011. Okay, it was before the allegations. Or I should say the conviction, really. Wait. All the mean differences we found are small to moderate. This means that the distributions of traits for men and women are largely overlapping. To illustrate this fact, in Figure 10, we present the male and female distributions from our sample for the trait which showed the largest gender difference, agreeableness. One can see that both men and women can be found across a similar range of agreeableness scores, such that despite the fact that women score higher than men on average, there are many men who are more agreeable than many women, and many women who are less agreeable than many men. Given that agreeableness showed the largest gender difference in our study, all other traits for which we reported significant gender differences would show even greater overlap in men's and women's distributions. Although the mean differences in personality between genders may be important in shaping human experience and human culture, they are probably not so large as to preclude effective communication between men and women. Unlike Bill Cosby, we are optimistic that any difficulties in communication between men and women are due primarily to cultural norms that are amenable to change, rather than to differences in basic personality traits which are much more difficult to change. So this is saying the opposite of what JBP just said. This is saying that this is socially driven, and that actually when you account for all of the variables, this is the greatest distinction that you'll find, that they found in this study, I should say, is agreeableness between men and women, and it's this close. That's pretty fucking close, okay? That's a pretty good overlap. He kind of took an L on that one. I would like to know where he's getting his source.
And you might think, well, it's all the right-wing psychologists. It's like, all the right-wing psychologists are in this room, sitting in this chair.
That part's probably true, because being a right-wing psychologist means that you don't follow the standards of care for a psychologist. Okay, that's it. Purely anecdotal, I've always had an easier time relating to men and men more approachable, but I'm also a trans dude, so that probably has something to do with it. Yeah, I mean, if you identify as a man, like I said, there are social influences at play there, right? You're taught from the time, even before you're born, what happens? Gender reveal party, at least in America. We got to burn down a forest, right? Gender reveal party. If the fire is blue, that's a boy. If the fire is pink, it's a girl. We teach you from such a young age, I'm talking before you're born, that there's a difference between boys and girls, men and women, right? Always, throughout the entirety of your life, you're taught this. We separate things between boys and girls. You have separate bathrooms. You have separate toys. You have separate rooms. You sit on separate sides of the classroom. You have separated cubby holes or lockers or whatever the fuck you use. Everything is segregated by gender. Everything. All the time. Always. Even in stores. You see it. You see the boys section, boys toys, boys clothes, boys soap, boys whatever. And the girls section, girls toys, girls soap, girls makeup, right? It's so ingrained. And people just miss this. They just miss this. They just take it for granted. They're like, what? Like, oh, it must be biological. Clearly, there's biological differences. Look around you, dude. Look around you. This is all socially driven. What are you talking about, right? And also, we have the studies to prove it now. So, like I said, this is one of Jordan Peterson's more coherent videos. So I'm not going to go off on too much of a raging tirade about it. But he said some correct things here. But ultimately, he was wrong in his final conclusion, which was that, you know, they found that there are big differences, and the more egalitarian you are, the bigger the differences are. And I don't think that's true. Unless he can source that, I don't think that's true. And that's why he and the people sitting in the room there are the only right-wing psychologists, because they'll believe things based on nothing. Thank you all so much for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you want to see more. Hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload. Go to youtube.com/AlecGunterTTV/join to join the channel membership for only 99 cents a month. You get a channel badge next to your name along with exclusive channel emotes. And the best part is you get to see early access videos that have not come out yet that I still need to make thumbnails for because I'm too lazy. 99 cents a month. Very cheap, very good deal. The best deal ever. That's about it. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.